This is Tony T here from Tony'sPicks.com with our college football pick show. This is week 7, part 3. We're going to do these in parts. We're going to have 15 on this show. We already have 20 up on the channel. So make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. Lots of free picks over our channel from myself as well as the team of cappers here at Tony'sPicks.com. We go live every day, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. It is the Tony 6 Morning Show. And hit us up with that like, that thumbs up. We greatly appreciate it. If you're looking for cappers, you can apply. Send us an email. The form is on our homepage. Then visit our site, Tony'sPicks.com. We're a multi-capper site showcasing top performers in our industry. Click the links to the hot cappers. Get signed up to long-term pass. Top performers up here like Sean Higgs or Rod Zawacki Mills, guys you know from our live show, as well as our YouTube video. Brian Biller's been hot. Brian Palmer's been on a tear right now over on the channel as well on the website. You see him on our live shows. Latest pick picks here, set the page with best bets and more. We will be locked and loaded here for this card on Thursday. Remember, all of our one-day passes are profit guaranteed. They must turn a profit amount purchased is credit back to your account for site bets. That's profit guarantee. And then our promo code TonyT at checkout knocks off that 15%. The link is in the description to get signed up. So let's get this one underway. TCU and Kansas State. This one going off on Saturday. TCU is now 4-1 after their 35-21 home victory against Colorado. The Horned Frogs rushed for under 3 yards a carry and were effective through the air. They contained the Buffs' ground attack and allowed 217 yards passing for 7.2 yards per pass attempt. Josh Hoover in the game, 23 of 33 passing for 275 yards with 4 touchdowns. He had a rushing score. Kansas State 2-4 after a 35-34 road defeat at Baylor. Wildcats gained 501 yards with effective rushing and passing. They limited the Bears' ground attack but allowed 345 yards passing for 8.8 yards per pass attempt. Avery Johnson, 29 of 45 passing for 339 yards with 2 touchdowns and a pick. TCU in their lone conference road game dropped a 27-24 decision to Arizona State. Kansas State at home in conferences rushed for 6.4 yards a carry and getting accurate quarterback play. Their pass defense has been good at home in conference. TCU's defensive numbers were bad in conference at Arizona State, allowing 5 yards a carry and 291 yards passing for 7.5 yards per pass attempt. TCU 4-7 to the spread on the road. Kansas State 8-3 to the spread at home against the conference. The pick here will be Kansas State plus the 2. Northwestern and Penn State going off on Saturday. All right, we've got Northwestern 3-2 after a 42-7 home victory against Monroe. The Wildcats gained 515 yards with effective rushing and passing. They limited the Warhawks to 2.9 yards a carry with 186 yards passing for 8.1 yards per pass attempt. Preston Stone in the game, 20 of 31 passing for 262 yards with 3 touchdowns. Penn State 3-2 after a 42-37 road defeat at UCLA. The Nittany Lions rushed for 157 yards for 5 yards a carry and moved the football through the air. They allowed 269 yards rushing to the Bruins for over 5 yards a carry with 166 yards passing for 6.9 yards per pass attempt. Drew Allard, 19 of 26 passing for 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. He rushed for 78 yards in the game. Northwestern Conference rushed for 4.8 yards a carry. Penn State defense against the Big Ten is allowing 5 yards a carry with 73% completion rate. Penn State 1-4 to the spread at home. Facing teams allow 17 points per game or fewer. Pick here Northwestern plus 22. Nebraska and Maryland going off here on Saturday. Nebraska now 4-1 after a 38-27 home victory against Michigan State. The Cornhuskers were limited on the ground and moved the football through the air. They defended the pass and run well. Dylan Raiola, 16 of 24 passing for 194 yards with a touchdown and pick. Maryland fell to 4-1 after their 24-20 home defeat to Washington. Terrapins blew a 20-0 lead. They rushed for 2.8 yards a carry and were inefficient in the passing game. They limited the Huskies' ground attack but allowed 275 yards passing for 6.7 yards per pass attempt. Malik Washington in the game, 30 of 49 passing for 219 yards with a touchdown and pick. He had a rushing score. First true road game for Nebraska after their opener against Cincinnati was played on neutral field in Kansas City. Cornhuskers against the conference are rushing for just 2 yards a carry and allowing 187 yards rushing per game for 5.5 yards per rush. The Terrapins have defended well against the conference with 2.3 yards per rush and 6.7 yards per pass attempt. Nebraska 0-2 to the spread on the road after a home win. Pick here Maryland plus 6.5. NC State and Notre Dame going off on Saturday. All right, we've got NC State now 4-2 after a 56-10 home victory against FCS Campbell. 2 weeks ago, it was a 23-21 home defeat to Virginia Tech. The Wolfpack rushed for under 2 yards of carry and moved the football through the air. Defensively, they limited the Hokies' passing attack, allowed 229 yards rushing for 7.5 yards per rush. C.J. Bailey, 26-34 passes for 240 yards and 2 touchdowns. Notre Dame, 3-2 after a 28-7 home victory against Boise State. Fighting Irish rushed for 200 yards for 6.5 yards of carry with movement in the passing game. They limited the Broncos to 29 yards on the ground with 215 passing yards for 5.8 yards per pass attempt. C.J. Carr, 15-23 passing for 189 yards and 2 scores. And NC State has generated offense on the road, nearly 5 yards a carry with accurate quarterback play. They have defended their run well away from home. Notre Dame at home has struggled with pass defense, allowing 293 yards a game, 7.8 yards per pass attempt. We'll take NC State here plus 22.5. App State and Georgia State going off here on Saturday. We got App State now 3-2 after their 27-23 home victory against Oregon State. The Mountaineers rushed for 136 yards for 3.8 yards a carry and had really good movement through the air. They held the Beavers to 3.9 yards per rush, but 358 yards passing for 8 yards per pass attempt. J.J. Cole in the game, 13-28 passing for 218 yards and a touchdown. Georgia State sits at 1-4 with a 14-7 home defeat to James Madison. The Panthers rushed for 37 yards but moved the ball through the air. They allowed 211 yards rushing to the Dukes for 4.9 yards a carry, but only 74 yards passing. T.J. Finley, 19-28 passing for 198 yards and a touchdown. App State has defended the run well and limits quarterback accuracy. The Panthers are allowing 5.5 yards per rush and 8.2 yards per pass attempt. The Mountaineers are getting good quarterback play with 271 yards per game with 7.1 yards per pass attempt. Georgia State 1-3 to the spread on the road, facing teams that average 250 yards per game or greater. Pick here will be Appalachian State minus 2.5. Old Dominion and Marshall going off on Saturday. Old Dominion now 4-1 after a 47-7 home victory at Coastal Carolina. The Monarchs gained 619 yards with a strong performance in rushing and passing. They held the Chanticleers to 108 yards passing with 81 rushing yards for 2.2 yards a carry. Colton Joseph here, 17-30 passing for 315 yards and 4 touchdowns. He rushed for 66 yards and a score. Marshall drops to 2-3 after a 54-51 road defeat to Louisiana in overtime. Thundering Herd rushed for 245 yards, 5 yards a carry. With good work in the passing game, they allowed 264 yards of rushing to the Richmond Cajuns for 5.7 yards a carry, 197 passing for 7 yards per pass attempt. Carlos Del Rio Wilson goes 24-31, 206 yards with 3 touchdowns. He rushed for 81 yards in the game. ODU is rushing for 6.8 yards a carry, more efficient with efficient quarterback play. Marshall is a good rushing team that is getting accurate play at quarterback. Thundering Herd allows 245 yards passing per game with 8.2 yards per pass attempt. They are 6-2 in the over against the conference at home. Take care, Old Dominion Marshall over 56. Indiana and Oregon going off here on Saturday. All right, we got Indiana now 5-0 after a 20-16 road win at Iowa. The Hoosiers were limited to 2.6 yards per rush and effective in the passing game. They held Iowa to 2.9 yards a carry and 192 passing for 5 yards per pass attempt. Renato Mendoza here, 13-23 passing for 233 yards with 2 touchdowns and a pick. Oregon 5-0 after a 30-24 road overtime victory in Penn State. Ducks rushed for 176 yards for 4.5 yards a carry and moved the ball well in the passing game. They limited the Nittany Lions through the air and allowed 139 yards rushing for 4 yards a carry. Dante Moore, 29-39 passing for 248 yards and 3 scores. In 2 games last year against the playoff teams, Hoosiers were beaten by 10 at Notre Dame and 23 against Ohio State. The Ducks are rushing for 6.3 yards a carry and getting really good quarterback play. On defense, they limit teams to 3.4 yards per run, 5.2 yards per pass attempt. The offensive production was lacking in Indiana's lone road game of the season. The Hoosiers 1-5 of the spread on the road, facing teams that average 31 points per game or greater. Oregon 10-6 of the spread as a home favorite. Pick here Oregon minus 7.5. Oklahoma and Texas going off on Saturday. Oklahoma 5-0 after a 44-0 home victory against Penn State. Sooners gained at 355 yards with good overall rushing and passing performance. They held the Golden Flashes to 17 rushing yards with 118 yards passing for 6.2 yards per pass attempt. John Mateer is questionable with that thumb injury. Michael Hawkins 14-24 passing for 162 yards and 3 touchdowns. He rushed for 33 yards and a score. Texas 3-2 with a 29-21 road defeat to Florida. Longhorns rushed for only 52 yards but moved the ball through the air. They allowed 457 yards to the Gators, but poor defense against the run and pass. Arch Manning here 16-29 passing for 263 yards with 2 touchdowns and 2 picks. Manning has been inaccurate in losses at Ohio State and Florida. The Sooners defense allowing 2.4 yards per rush, only 4.8 yards per pass attempt. Texas pass defense not as good as Oklahoma. The Sooners have notable wins against Auburn and Michigan behind really good defensive performances. Texas 2-9 of the spread, facing teams that average 250 yards passing or greater. Pick here Oklahoma +1. Ball State and Western Michigan going off on Saturday. Ball State now 2-3 after a 20-14 home victory against Ohio. The Cardinals were inefficient in the passing game but rushed for 172 yards for 4.1 yards a carry. They allowed 168 yards rushing to the Bobcats for 4.5 yards a carry and 108 yards passing for 6.5 yards per pass attempt. Kyle Kelly in the game, 17-33 passing for 185 yards and a touchdown. He rushed for 96 yards and a score. Western Michigan 3-3 with their 21-3 road win at UMass. The Broncos rushed for 217 yards for 5.2 yards a carry. They limited the Minutemen to under 2 yards per rush with 203 yards passing for 5.8 yards per pass attempt. Brock Lauer in the game, 18-25 passing for 163 yards and a touchdown. He rushed for 92 yards and a score. Western Michigan is getting bad quarterback play and rushed for 3.6 yards a carry. The Cardinals are rushing for 154 yards per game with 4.2 yards per rush. Their defense was good in the conference win against Ohio. The Cardinals 4-0 to the spread on the road as an underdog of 3.5 to 10 points. Pick here Ball State +10. Navy and Temple going off here on Saturday. Navy 5-0 after a 34-31 home victory against Air Force. Minutemen put up 517 yards with effective rushing and passing the football. They allowed 460 yards to the Falcons with 4.7 yards per rush, 12.5 yards per pass attempt. Blake Horvath completed 20-26 passes for 339 yards and 3 scores. He rushed for 130 yards and a touchdown. Temple 3-2 with a 27-21 home victory against UTSA. The Owls rushed for 128 yards for 4 yards a carry with 7.2 yards per pass attempt. Evan Simon here, 16-25 passing for 181 yards and 2 touchdowns. Temple allowing 5.2 yards per carry. Navy is rushing for 6.5 yards a carry and getting really good quarterback play with 69% completion rate, 12.2 yards per pass attempt. Midshipman has defended well. They are 7-3 to the spread on the road against the conference. Temple 1-3 to the spread as a home underdog of 7.5 to 14 points. Pick here will be Navy minus 9. Arkansas and Tennessee going off here on Saturday. Arkansas fell to 2-3 after a 56-13 home defeat to Notre Dame. Razorbacks rushed for 158 yards for 5.3 yards a carry and moved the football through the air. They surrendered at 641 yards to the Fighting Irish with really poor defense against the run and pass. Kalen Green here, 17-32 passes for 107 yards and a pick. He rushed for 81 yards in the game. Tennessee sits at 4-1 after a 41-34 road win at Mississippi State. Volunteers rushed for 4.1 yards a carry and were effective with their passing game. They allowed 203 yards passing for 3.5 yards a carry and contained the Bulldogs' passing game. Joey Aguilar here, 24 of 40 passing for 335 yards with a touchdown and 2 picks. He had a rushing score in the game. Tennessee offense rushes for 5 yards a carry with 337 yards passing for 9.1 yards per attempt here. They limit opponents to 2.8 yards per rush. Arkansas let go of their coach, and it's run by an interim now, and they've lost 3 straight, giving up an average of 43 points per game. They're giving up 8.1 yards per pass attempt this season. Pick here, Tennessee minus 12.5. UAB and FAU going off on Saturday. UAB dropping to 2-3 after a 31-13 home defeat to Army. The Blazers rushed for 103 yards for 5.7 yards a carry and moved the ball through the air. On defense, they allowed 247 yards rushing to the Black Knights with 4 yards a carry. Jalen Kitna here, 24 of 42 passing for 259 yards with a touchdown and pick. FAU now 2-3 after a 27-21 road win at Rice. The Owls in the game rushed for 3.2 yards a carry and moved the ball through the air. They gave up 213 yards rushing for 4.4 yards a carry, along with 8.1 yards per pass attempt. Caden Veldkamp in the game, 23 of 33 passing for 290 yards and 3 touchdowns in the game. UAB has really been poor defensively against the conference, giving up 5 yards a carry, 18 yards per pass attempt. FAU against the conference has been accurate in the passing game and averaging 306 yards passing per game. Defensively in the conference, the Owls allowing 5.5 yards per rush, 9.3 yards per pass attempt. Blazers 8-4 to the over as a road underdog. FAU 2-0 to the over at home, facing teams that allow 425 yards per game or greater. Pick here, UAB and FAU over 69.5. Iowa and Wisconsin going off on Saturday. Iowa drops to 3-2 after a 20-15 home defeat to Indiana. The Hawkeyes were held to under 3 yards a carry and inefficient in the passing game. They limited the Hoosiers' ground attack and allowed 233 yards passing for 10.1 yards per pass attempt. Mark Gonakowski here, 19-25 passing for 145 yards and an interception. He was banged up with the bye week and is in track to play on Saturday. Wisconsin fell to 2-3 after a 24-10 road defeat to Michigan. Badgers rushed for under 3 yards a carry and didn't get enough from their passing game. They allowed 5 yards per rush to the Wolverines with 270 passing yards for 9.6 yards per pass attempt. Billy Edwards missed the game with his knee injury. Hunter Simmons, 18-29 passing for 177 yards and a pick. Wisconsin looks to start their third-string quarterback here. The Badgers have been held to 10 points in each of their 2 conference games. But Iowa, in their road game at Rutgers, allowed 28 points with 282 passing yards for 8.9 yards per pass attempt. Wisconsin defense is holding teams at 2.9 yards per rush. Iowa's passing game on the road has been ineffective and so may not be able to exploit the Badgers here. They are 2-4 to the spread on the road, facing a team that allows 3.25 yards per rush or lower. Pick here, Wisconsin plus 3.5. UL Monroe and Coastal Carolina for Saturday. UL Monroe fell to 3-2 after a 42-7 road defeat to Northwestern. The Warhawks rushed for 2.9 yards a carry and moved the football through the air. They allowed 515 yards to the Wildcats and poorly defended the run along with the pass. Aiden Armenta, 10 of 19 passing for 129 yards and a touchdown. Coastal Carolina 2-3 after a 47-7 road defeat to Old Dominion. The Chanticleers were held to 2.4 yards per rush and ineffective in the passing game. They allowed 619 yards to the Monarchs with poor work defending the run and pass. Tad Hudson in the game goes 19-30 passing for 108 yards with a touchdown and a pick. UL Monroe has a 12-point home conference win against Arkansas State behind 6.6 yards per rush and excellent run defense. Chanticleers against a conference that has gotten poor quarterback play and allowing 6 yards per rush with 7.3 yards per pass attempt. Coastal Carolina 2-5 the spread at home against winning teams. Pick your UL Monroe here at minus 2.5. San Jose State and Wyoming going off on Saturday. San Jose State here 2-3 after a 35-28 home victory against New Mexico. The Spartans rushed for 153 yards for 4.3 yards a carry and effective in the passing game. They limited the Lobos to under 3 yards a carry, but 344 yards passing for 8.6 yards per pass attempt. Walker Eget here 26 of 30 passing for 334 yards and 3 touchdowns. Wyoming drops to 2-3 with their 31-17 home defeat to UNLV. The Cowboys rushed for 4 yards a carry, but they were inefficient in the passing game. They limited the Rebels through the air and allowed 153 yards rushing for 3.9 yards a carry. Keaton Anderson in the game, 25 of 46 passing for 254 yards with a touchdown and a pick. San Jose State offense is rushing for 4.5 yards a carry and throwing for 305 yards a game. They have defended the run well. Wyoming has struggled with play at the quarterback position. On defense, they allow 4.7 yards a carry. The Spartans 11-2 the spread on the road. Wyoming 1-5 the spread in back-to-back home games. Pick your San Jose State here, minus the 1.5. For more free pick videos, be sure to subscribe to our channel. We have lots of free picks over our channel delivered by myself as well as a team of cappers here at Tony'sPicks.com, making this a great channel to subscribe to. Hit us up with that like, that thumbs up. We greatly appreciate that. And then visit our site, Tony'sPicks.com, for our best bets. Our pre and plays are there. And then our promo code TonyT at checkout knocks off that 15%. The link is in the description to get signed up. That will do it for now. I'm Tony T, and we'll talk with you guys later.